Well, this is Dr. Scott, and today I'm going to break down cortisol. And that's kind of a pun because cortisol, well, it's a catabolic hormone that breaks things down. It is a steroid hormone. We're going to talk all about it. It's definitely been vilified as a bad thing, but cortisol actually itself is extremely important. Without cortisol, we would die. Okay. And so in this video, we're going to go through cortisol as a logistics hormone, how it is technically raised in stress, but not really a stress hormone. We'll talk more about that. Talk about how acute cortisol mobilizes fuel, but chronic cortisol actually stores it, especially in visceral fat. That's the fat around your organs. That's the fat you don't want to have. It's the hidden fat that can actually cause a lot of danger down the road. Visceral fat itself is an adaptive buffer, not a failure. And we're going to talk about how evolutionary has had this capacity to make us store fat around our organs in case we need it after a prolonged time of not being able to eat. Many of us don't have to go through that anymore, thankfully. And then we'll also talk about how chronic sympathetic tone rewires where this fat is stored and actually prefers visceral fat, which for us modern humans is not a good idea. And then the solution, of course, is to restore the sequence, to optimize our sympathetic nervous system. And this is going to help everything get better. So with that in mind, let's get started, right? So first thing to mention here is that cortisol is not the problem technically. It's why people are having cortisol raised in the first place. So it is a control hormone. Cortisol really answers this one question. How do I make energy available right now so I can stay functional? The problem is living in physiology that never gives it permission to fall, to let it go down. Now, it's predictable and rhythmic, typically how cortisol is raised. It's a stress hormone in the sense that it raises when we wake up and to mobilize glucose. And then it's actually its lowest right before we go to bed so we can actually go to sleep and rise. If you're the 2 o'clock in the morning waker upper kind of person, your cortisol may be rising too early from a number of different reasons, most likely because you're a stress response. But your cortisol rises in the morning to help wake you up, mobilize glucose, mobilize fatty acids so you can start thinking and doing the work that you want to do and, being functional. So acute stress, let's talk about this. Acute stress, it increases or it modulates and revs up the HPA axis. This is your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Your cortisol is actually released from your adrenal glands itself. And it's temporary. It should be temporary at least. And then what it does is it raises your glucose via gluconeogenesis, which is how your liver produces glucose kind of de novo, so inside your body. It mobilizes free fatty acids. It reduces insulin sensitivity, at least briefly, and it narrows your attention, your focus, and it increases your decisiveness. This is all the state it's supposed to do, and it's supposed to be used, and it's supposed to resolve. So your fuel comes out of storage, you get your work done, and your cortisol falls, okay? In this context, and in this context specifically, cortisol itself is fat burning because it's mobilizing free fatty acids. It's not fat building. Now, let's talk about chronic stress when your body's never allowed to get into that parasympathetic mode. It's always in that fight or flight, always releasing cortisol, always releasing neurotransmitters like norepinephrine and epinephrine. By the way, those neurotransmitters don't work unless cortisol is around, meaning you need to have them in combination. So if you're burnt out and you have no more cortisol, those neurotransmitters don't work anymore, even though you're pumping them out, and it becomes in sort of that adrenal burnout kind of thing. So again, chronic stress itself is not just too much cortisol, but it's definitely part of that ecosystem. And so what is chronic stress? Well, it's this sympathetic activation. And then this cortisol is being raised, or it's rising all the time. And the system shifts into a place where it needs cortisol to function at all, meaning you can't ever kind of come down because the system is just so destabilized when you do. So what happens here with this chronic cortisol elevation is that you have this persistent elevation, which upregulates something called the 11-beta-HSD1 in visceral fat. This is a specific receptor that's actually a local receptor in your visceral fat that increases the amount of fat that's going to be stored in your visceral areas, in your visceral around your organs, so that you have a place to store all this fat. Because the body thinks you're on this fight or flight, that you're never going to see food again, that you're always in the stress mode. So it needs to build or at least keep some fat in reserve so that when you do not have enough food available, for example, you can use this and mobilize this fat around your organs so that you actually can survive in winter times, in fasting times. So you have insulin resistance, you have increased lipoprotein lipase activity, you have preferred triglyceride uptake, and again, visceral adipogenesis. You have more visceral fat that's being made. So this is a defensive, energetic, economic thing going on here. So your body's in this, really, really interesting place where, because visceral fat itself, it's highly vascular, it's highly innervated, it's cortisol sensitive, and it's rapidly mobilizable, which means from an evolutionary standpoint, what if food disappears tomorrow? Well, visceral fat is like your insurance. It's not an indulgence. This is the fat that really helps you survive when you don't have enough food around. It's fast access fuel. It's central storage, so right in the belly in this area. And of course, it's not about vanity. You don't even know you have visceral fat. It's about maintaining this control of having a fat mobilization under uncertainty, okay? So during short-term fasting or acute energy demand, this visceral fat is often mobilized first. It has higher catecholamine sensitivity, which means that when norepinephrine and epinephrine are being released from your brain because you're stressed, it's going directly to your visceral fat first to mobilize. It's got greater lipolytic activity and responsiveness, which means you can mobilize the free fatty acids from that actual fat faster. But the context matters, right? If you have a chronically stressed system, your cortisol is elevated all the time. Your insulin resistance is persisting. So the signal becomes threat, not efficiency. And the body stops burning insurance and actually starts adding to it. It's the same behavior, but different physiology with the opposite outcome. Now you have, instead of burning this visceral fat, you're actually gaining more visceral fat because, again, that cortisol actually has more receptors in the visceral fat. And if you're stressed for long periods of time, you're actually going to preferentially bind to those receptors and increase visceral fat uptake and visceral fat growth, which is the type of fat, by the way, that causes heart attacks, that causes strokes. This is the type of visceral fat that is, visceral fat's exactly correlated to degeneration, to cardiovascular disease, coronary disease, and so much more. The short-term elevations of cortisol, again, whether from stress, illness, short-term glucocorticoid exposure, can actually lead to that temporary weight loss that we talked about, right? Increased lipolysis, elevated free fatty acids, increased glucose availability. I remember when I took hydrocortisone once for a stress response and for a need of some hydrocortisone, I burned fat very, very quickly over a couple of days. I felt fantastic. People that take this feel great because their stress hormones are up. I mean, unless you're already burnt out, then it's not going to feel very good. But the thing is, if you maintain that cortisol elevation for long periods of time, because you stay in that sympathetic nervous system for long periods of time, instead of getting resolution, right, that cortisol is elevated, then you have muscle breakdown increase, mitochondrial efficiency drops. And this is because those stress hormones cause the mitochondria to make all this energy. The energy also comes with waste products that reactive oxygen species set up, which means that, so when we make energy, we make ATP, we make water, carbon dioxide, we also make reactive oxygen species, and we need antioxidants to neutralize that. But if we're burning the candle at both ends, we have too much energy being produced, we actually deplete our antioxidants at the same time. So our insulin resistance also gets worse as well. And again, we actually build more of this visceral fat. So in chronic cortisol states, free fatty acids stay elevated, glucose stays elevated, insulin signal is impaired, mitochondrial not working very well. And then you have this sort of like energy traffic jam. This fuel is available, but the system just doesn't trust that it's safe to use it. And then this is really where we get into a huge, huge challenge, right? So what do we do, right? So what we really want to do is restore sequencing so that we can optimize all of the various markers that we just mentioned here, right? We have to really restore sequencing, which means energy before regulation, safety before optimization, rhythm before restriction. So we have to give the system this kind of feeling where fuel will be available tomorrow. It's going to be okay. So we have to down-regulate the system. We have to get the system to calm itself down and relax, right? And so what I mean by this is that we have to get that sympathetic nervous system offline so that the body is no longer in this state of feeling like it's unsafe, like things going around all the world, your world, are just not safe enough to relax, to calm down, and to get this system to recalibrate itself. So again, cortisol is not the enemy. It's only the enemy as sort of flak or collateral damage when the system is under sympathetic overload for too long a period of time. Instead of being helpful and giving you that stress response, now it's detrimental because it's giving you this cortisol elevation for a long period of time. And then what happens after a result of that is that you start actually building more of that visceral fat around your organs. Not only that, your immune system starts dysregulating, your mitochondria starts dysregulating, and you start burning out your capacity to actually make cortisol, and those neurotransmitters like norepinephrine and epinephrine are no longer working anymore. So what can you do? You have to calm down your nervous system. You have to be understanding that the way we do this is by first acknowledging this is happening and recognizing it, and then down-regulating our nervous system in various ways to build the system back up. We do this by leveraging the GABA system. We do this by leveraging the mitochondria and optimizing mitochondrial function, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and cofactors. Taking away the shame of being in this state. It's okay. Many of us are just living this way because we think this is the way it's supposed to be, but it doesn't have to be. We can calm down our nervous system. We can drop back into parasympathetic. And I do this using a combination of a framework called Health Optimization Medicine. You can check it out at homehope.org, where I've been trained. If you're a practitioner, this is a way to optimize vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and cofactors. Also leveraging the GABA system, which is our calming nervous system in our brain, to actually regulate our nervous system better. And then figuring out what are the inputs that are causing us to feel this way in the first place. Is it a stressful job, stressful work? Is it a stressful relationship? Is it a snoring partner? Is it trauma when you were a child? There's no shame in any of these things. We have to address them. Long term, it can take a while. Short term, leveraging the GABA system is crucial, okay? So cortisol, visceral fat, chronic stress response. It's all things that can be addressed. Just take it one step at a time. The first step is recognition, and then we can do something about it. Thank you for listening. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe below so you never miss an episode, and we'll check you next time. Thank you.